What's up, Aceholes? Welcome back to another Harvest of Sorrows card review. This time it's Monsters, the 5th faction of the reveal season. Of course, as of recording this, we've already seen all the cards and the patch notes and everything. So I'm really just here to wrap this up. Monsters this time is continuing with relicts, which we all expected, right? There's really no big surprise there. They are, however, focusing on sort of a new theme, at least with a couple of these cards, that I think is really interesting and very fitting for monsters. So let's just get into it. Let's just talk about it. First off is Incubus. Women exist to be worshipped, I noticed the text was, so he's a simp. Which is fine. A 5 for 5. Deploy, summon a bronze unit from your opponent's graveyard to the opposite row. Then summon a bronze unit of equal or less provisions from your graveyard to this row. Now this is one of those cards that are playing into this sort of a new idea. And I think it's really cool. You know, summoning units both for your opponent and for yourself. And there are like two main reasons that, you know, come to mind immediately for why you would want to do this. One is Sabbath. You know, the epic of this expansion plays more into that, but you know, Sabbath, you know, requires you to have 25 or more power on one row, and it usually takes a few turns to set up, right? Not that many turns, but you know, at least I'd say, under normal circumstances, at least 2 or 3 turns, right? Now, what Incubus does, you know, it is 5 strength, and maybe it brings back like a 9 strength unit on your side. That's 4 points. That is 4 points. That is 14 points on your row. And of course, the idea here is, you know, monsters, you know, they're known for big units. Just big bodies, big threatening, big base power units. Griffin, Gwent, and some goals which are not relevant to Incubus, but again are relevant to which is Sabbath, which we'll talk about afterwards. You know, these big base power units, and if you're able to summon, let's say, a 5 provision bronze from your opponent's side, 4 base power, and maybe it's a deploy-based one, so summoning it renders it fairly useless beyond the 4 base power. And then you give yourself a Griffin, or a Genken. You know, 14 minus 4, it's still a 10 for 5. Helps you set up Sabbath. It's just really interesting. I don't know how much more they could do with this. Obviously, there are only 2 cards in this particular set to play with this mechanic. But I think it's a fresh new way to, you know, for monsters to utilize, you know, their big base powers. Obviously, you play big base power units, and then you can consume them from your graveyard. And now we have another way to utilize their big bodies and, you know, lack of deploys. I mean, obviously, a lot of them have deploys. Again, Ken has a deploy. But after deploying it once, you don't have to deploy it again for it to be good. So you know, how relevant is it going to be? I don't know. Obviously, it does also play into, you know, just it's resurrection, right? Like you get to bring back one of your bronze units. That can be really good. You know, you're dependent on your opponent having bronze units of the same provision cost or higher that aren't too painful for you to return to them. But like, as long as you can do that, as long as you can find, you know, some feasible target, you know, you can use this as point slam, or you can use it as just a res. As long as the opponent's unit doesn't surpass 5 points, you know, this is essentially just 5 provisions, res one of your units, one of your bronze units. Similar to Freya's Blessing. Of course, you don't get the deploy, but maybe you don't want it, you know? So I like the card. I like the theme they're going with. It's a nice new take on, you know, big monsters, but also, you know, you can bring back harpy eggs. You can bring back, you know, whatever. So many things you can bring back. And also just point slam. So, a flexible card. You can use it in different ways. It's a cool mechanic. Incubus gets a thumbs up. Because that's the thing I do here, of course. I give thumbs up to all the cards. But it's good. I really enjoy it. Witch's Sabbath is a new 10 provision organic that plays into a similar theme. Summon up to 3 highest power units from your opponent's graveyard to an enemy row. Then summon as many highest power monster units from your graveyard to the opposite row and give them doomed. So it's very similar. You know, you give your opponent's units from their graveyard, and in return you get to give yourself units. And you profit from this by either having just bigger units than your opponent, or by, you know, I mean, in this case, it's mostly about the biggest, because highest power is a requirement here. You know, so if your opponent is playing Skellige and they have great swords, you might have to pull out a great sword. In return, you know, maybe you get Spear Tip, so that's worth 2 points. And then, you know, there are going to be good matchups, there are going to be bad ones. I feel like Skellige with all their 8 base power units, Bear Witchers, Great Swords at 10. This card may not get as much value. Of course, in those matchups, you can use another organic from Price of Power, the Bleeding Effigy, to banish those bronzes. Get pretty big points on your side. Banish a Great Sword, you get a 10 for 4. And your Witch's Sabbath becomes better. So it synergizes with existing cards from the previous sets. And of course, in some matchups, it's going to be great. Like if you bring back, let's say it's you know, you're bringing back Old Spear Tip, She Who Knows, and Goliath. That's 32 points on your board. So first of all, you know, the card is called Witch's Sabbath, which is very fitting because you're going to set up Sabbath probably in this one card, which already does add points to the card. Because if playing this card allows you to play something like Witch Apprentice, you know, a turn or two sooner, allows you to play Bloody Mistress and get the immediate transform sooner, worth it. So, yeah, you can get some extra points out of this card just based on that, but then you also have the potential of your units just outvaluing your opponent's units to the point where it's worth 10 provisions. It's a steep cost, and there will be matchups where it's going to be tough to get value. But, you know, you always have, if your opponent has big units, you have Bleeding Effigies, you have offensive Osrolls, you have ways to, you know, remove those units from the graveyard before you play Witch's Sabbath. And yeah, like I said, if you get Old Spear Tip, She Who Knows, Goliath, that's 32 points. And, I mean, what is a deck? What is a deck that I can think of here? It's so hard to like come up with a deck and then think of their highest base power units. But I feel like anything but Skellige, you can often get good value. And even if you're playing a Skellige and they have, you know, if you get rid of the Great Swords, but they still have like 3 8 base power units, they get 16 points, you get 32. This is still a 16-point card that sets up Sabbath. And that's if your opponent has 3 8s. A lot of opponents are not going to have 3 8s. Some will have better. Most probably have worse. So this card is just really interesting. And of course, it's up to 3. So if you're kind of screwed on the big units and you just want to bring out your spear tip, you can just do that, but that's not going to be very good. That's not going to be very good. You're going to want to probably go for the full 3 every time. But there will maybe be cases where that's actually going to be worth negative points, and then it's good to have a choice. So Witch's Sabbath, much like Incubus, plays with this very neat mechanic that I would love to see more of in monsters. It requires a little bit of thought, a little bit of prep work, and it gets a thumbs up from me. I am a big fan. Onto the common of the set. Lesser Witch, a 5/4 relic. Yep, they're all relics. Deploy, spawn a base copy of self in your graveyard. Bonded, spawn a base copy of self on this row instead. So most bonded units in the game, including a lot of the new ones. Unbonded, they're worth 6 points. Bonded, they're worth 8. That's a very common thing for bonded units. And, they're mostly for provisions. This sacrifices 1 point on the unbonded side, but gains 2 points on the bonded side. Is it good? Is it worth it? I don't know. I mean, you have Incubus that can bring back your Lesser Witch to help you play for the bonded. But bringing back a 5 with Incubus will often leave you at not that many points, unfortunately. But I'm sure there will be cases where it's a good play. The thing is, like, even as a 10/4 with bonded, a 5/4 unbonded is not going to be great. I mean, it is a relic, which does mean that if you set up some what's it called? Self-eater. Set up some self-eaters, like the relic tag alone will be worth a few extra points. If you have the bonded, it's a decent Mamuna target. But that she's only boosting by 5 and then playing a 10. Whereas with like Griffins and Genken, she boosts by 9 and plays a 9. So it's not great. It's not great. It's a decent 4 provision card. Do we have 4 provision relics? Witch Apprentice got nerfed. Maybe we don't. If so, if I'm right, and there are no good 4 provision relics, or any 4 provision relics at all, it's nice just for that. Having a 4 provision relic, being able to play Mushy Truffle in a relic deck, it can be pretty good. It's an 11 for 9 with carryover. Mushy Truffle. Sick card. But, Lesser Witch, I like it as a 4 provision card. I do wish it played more into the whole, like the new mechanic brought in by Incubus and Witch's Sabbath, but it's fine. I like it, but it's nothing special. And last up, Yaga the Legendary. 1 power, 13 provisions, deploy with Sabbath, gain Zeal, order, consume a 4 provision unit, then increase the provision value by 1. Cooldown 2. So, again, as I've said with like the past 3 card review videos, I'm a little bit late with these, so people have already probably figured out how everything works. But in case somebody missed it, because there were a lot of questions about this when this card was revealed, consume a 4 provision unit. That includes enemy units. That's how this card gets points. If your opponent has, I don't know, If they play a Magnet Division, just let it boost a little bit, and then you eat it. Because as long as it's 4 provisions, it doesn't matter how many points it has. You destroy it, and then you get all of its power. Which is potentially really, really good. The tricky part about this card, of course, is that you have to consume a 4 provision unit first. It's not even 4 or less, so you can't even get cheeky with an Elven Deadeye. It has to be a 4 provision unit. And then you gotta wait a couple of turns. And then it has to be a 5 provision unit. If you're able to set it up, and you do have Incubus, you do have Witch's Sabbath, somewhat, that can help you. And in a pinch, you can consume your own 4 provision unit just to have access to your opponent's 5 provision unit in 2 turns. You can play around with the card. You can set it up in a few ways. But it's I don't know. I'm gonna be honest, I was disappointed by this card. Like it is a spectacular legendary effect. I'll give them that, but I'm a little bit not too hyped to play this. Like all the other 3 cards, if I'm going to play relicts, which I'm not sure I'll do right away, but at some point I probably will. The 3 other cards here, I would like to include them. This, I don't know if I necessarily will. You know? But, either way, it's a very flavorful effect, looking at the art and, thinking about what kind of character this is. Very, very flavorful ability, and you're sure to feel powerful when you're literally eating your opponent's units, but it's a little bit like, how often is this gonna go off successfully? Obviously, like against a syndicate player who is forced to put all their coins into a sea jackal. Now we're talking. Then you just need 1 consume from this and you win. Like, I think in most cases, like, people can play around this, people can avoid it, and it's just not going to be great. But I could very well be proven wrong. Very well. I don't know. It is an interesting card. It's an interesting card. It can absolutely suck, or it can win the game by itself. And we just have to wait and see how consistently it can be on the game-winning side of its own spectrum. But for now, I'm gonna say Yaga, not amazing. I'm not planning on playing this anytime soon. But of course, if you're excited about it, I'm not here to tell you not to be. If you think this looks great and you want to play it, be my guest. Play this card. I hope you win some games. Just not against me. I don't want to lose to Yaga, but I probably will. Anyway, that does it for monsters. Overall, I am happy with the faction. Besides Yaga being a little bit on the sketchy side for me personally, I am very into these cards, and I'm very much in favor of what Incubus and Witch's Sabbath are bringing to the table with the whole summoning units on both sides. So overall, another successful faction. I mean, I can just say, like, we only have NR left, and I can spoil it already. I'm happy with all the factions for this set. I am. But I could probably have said the same thing about Thanet Coup and Once Upon a Pyre And maybe my opinion has changed since. Opinions change. Like, the cards look good on paper, and then one ends up being soul-crushingly oppressive, and then everything changes. But nothing here seems like it's going to be overly oppressive, so, you know, it's good. I'm happy with this. Relics, you're good in my book. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed hearing my thoughts on the new monster cards. I would love to hear yours too, so do leave them down below. And I hope to see you later today for talking about the NR cards. We got to knock these out before the expansion drops tomorrow, so yeah, I hope to see you again soon. Until then, have a good one and stay safe. Bye.